Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ice Cream Social Podcast for episode 3. It's hard to believe that we're on episode 3 and we don't want to kill each other yet, that we know of, right?
I'm not saying anything.
Anyway, I'm your host Tyler, and as always, my co-host is my wife Allie. So first off, we'd like to say if you're just now joining us for this podcast, like if you found us yesterday on social media or even this morning or whenever you're listening to this, the first 2 episodes are up and ready for you to listen or watch. Those are basically a recap of our relationship together, kind of how we started off, and the blending of our 2 families. We're, of course, going to get into more of those stories later down the line, but for now, we're going to kind of get into the meaty part of what our podcast is going to be, and that's fandoms. But before we go any further, as we always do here is, what are you wearing today?
So I am, of course, because today we're talking about fandom, and so I decided to wear like my top 3 most fandoms that I'm like are high, top high on my chart pretty much. So what I'm on the t-shirt that I'm wearing today is from my favorite video game, which is Final Fantasy X, and that's one of my top favorite video game of all times.
It's a good game.
It really is. Great story. And then, of course, I'm wearing my Inuyasha pajama pants once again.
They are washed.
Yes, they are. They're washed. And then, of course, next to me, I was going to wear it, but it got a little warm. It's my Wonder Woman hoodie. As a lot of y'all probably know, I'm a big Wonder Woman fan. So, of course, I had to...
Show us the tat.
Yes, I do have a tattoo of Wonder Woman on my arm for those YouTubers that want to check it out. It's kind of hard to see, but yeah. So, I definitely had to have something Wonder Woman because she is in my top fandom.
I don't think you can talk about your fandoms without putting Wonder Woman.
Yes,
so,
if I didn't, that would be like, wow, she is not that big.
right.
Fan.
It's like it, but she cosplays as her.
Yeah. So what are you wearing?
So I've kind of limited my fandom to what I'm wearing today to DC. I'll start off with my hat. It is a Red Hood hat. It's probably one of my most favorite hats. I love it, but I don't wear it often because I do want to kind of keep it clean. You sweat in hats and everything like that. But I'll kind of show it for our visual listeners on the YouTube. It's got the Red Hood logo on the back, Red Hood logo on the front, and actually when you flip it on the inside, it's got a comic book print of the Red Hood. So it's pretty cool. It's one of my favorite hats. And on my t-shirt, it is the Snyder Cut Justice League t-shirt. It was a promotion, I want to say it was a suicide awareness promotion as well that Zack Snyder did. He raised a bunch of money because his daughter did unfortunately commit suicide. And Justice League. It's got the Roman numeral dates for when the movie was originally released and then last year when the Snyder Cut came out. I will say this before we get into fandoms. I do want to say that, and I will talk about this later, but if you haven't seen the Snyder Cut, go watch the Snyder Cut. Don't let the theatrical release of Justice League be the only Justice League you see.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
It's great.
really, really good, actually.
So, anyway, I digress. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Before we get into our fandoms, we do, again, have 2 traditions on this show. What we're wearing, and then, of course...
Our ice cream. So this time we have...
Rocky Road.
Rocky Road for me.
And Rocky Road for me.
Oh,
yeah.
you went Rocky Road too?
I did, because someone didn't buy ice cream today when he left from work. So
you mean you, because
yeah,
I was...
Me.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are double Rocky Road
We're
today
both
from
double
Creamy Creations.
Rocky Road today. Yay. And it hasn't melted just yet.
Yeah, it hasn't yet. There's a little bit of Tater's hair in mine, but that's okay.
Very nice.
I'm not a fan of Rocky Road because I do not like nuts, but for the podcast, I am eating Rocky Road today.
Really? You don't like nuts?
I don't.
Right. Anyways.
Anyway.
So, I guess, do you want to start it off?
Sure.
With your fandoms.
So what we're going to do is we're going to list our fandoms, our top 5s, and then we're going to talk about them. We're going over in our heads how to do this, but I feel like we don't want to back and forth too much, so we're just going to list them and then kind of just, what do you like about this? What do you like?
Well, we're going to talk about our first, top 5.
Right.
We kind of narrowed it down to our top 5 because we are...
Fans of everything.
Fans of everything. There's so much fandom, and I guess we just did our top 5. And as we go on at other episodes, I'm sure we're gonna get into in more depth on our other fandoms that we really like. So we'll go ahead and start off with your first top 5 fandom that you do like.
So my top five, and I'll kind of give you a little summary of those for the ones that need a little bit more explanation. But my number one, real quick before we do get into this, I do want to say that a lot of folks that know us from like the Comic Con community, they might just think we're only comic book fans, but these fandoms are beyond that. I want to say that I don't want to just say that, oh, I think it's going to surprise some people, but I feel like you and I are fans of some things that people might not expect us to be fans of. So
Exactly. Yeah.
we'll see. But going into that, my number one is medieval fantasy. So, like your Lord of the Rings, your Witcher, your Skyrim, Arthurian legends, you know, Excalibur. If there is anything remotely touching that genre in a movie, a game, a show, I'm watching it. I don't care. I'm gonna watch it. It could be terrible, but I will watch it. That's my favorite thing. You know, growing up playing knights in the backyard with sticks,
Yep.
swords. I love them.
So cute.
Actual history is my number two favorite fandom. I love history. Went to
Yes, you
college
do.
for it. I do my best to find historical things on any trip we go to. I want to keep dragging her back to the East Coast because American colonial history is one of my absolute favorites.
You do.
But going on to number three is comic books and superheroes. Yeah, comic books and superheroes is number three behind actual history and medieval. Even though I am decked out and I have a few comic book tattoos, shirts, hats, you name it. My fourth favorite is pulpy, slow burns. So like you're really thick, you know, like Mad Men, like the show where it's just people talking, and you know it's just there's not much action going on. It's really just the folks like you know the scenes that are relying so heavy on the actors and their
And
own
draggy.
gravitas. Yeah, those shows, or you know a few Johnny Depp movies like Public Enemies or The Black Mass when he was like the gangsters. Those really like thick pulpy movies and shows I absolutely love. Just I think it kind of comes from my history.
Yeah.
Just you know I'll bring it all in. And then something I've been recently and I'm really big into recently is Formula One. I had a buddy get me into it about last season, and we actually ended up going to one of the races that they have in Austin last year, and it was an absolute blast. But I am a fan of sports. I'm not as in tune with I guess the sports nowadays and the stars like I used to be back in like the early 2000s. I guess when I was more of a kid watching with my parents. But while we do live in San Antonio, I am not a San Antonio fan. And I'll get into that a little bit later. So that was my 5 top fandoms. We do have a few that we do not like, but we'll get into those a little bit later.
Yes.
What are your top 5?
Okay, so my top fandom, I think for me, I do love history, but I like, I guess, more Gothic and Victorian history. I'm more into like mythical as well as like I love vampires. I am one of those. I'm a vampire sucker.
Are you a Twihard?
Well, I'm sorry.
Are you a Twihard?
No. I like Twilight. I did like it, but I wasn't like a super fan of Twilight. I wasn't going crazy. I wasn't like I actually didn't read the books. If I did, I think I maybe touched a little bit the books and ran a scan through it, but I'm not a crazy like book reader that, you know, I do like reading books, but I'm not like hardcore into books. So, yeah, I do love vampires, but I think my most favorite series for me of vampires is definitely Vampire Diaries. I like the teen, you know, soapy opera.
The CW vampires?
Yeah, I wish it was better, but you know, or True Blood. Actually, True Blood is
True Blood was good.
I love
Until
True
they
Blood.
brought in fairies.
Yeah, but that's another thing. I actually like the fairies. I actually liked it. Again, and that brings into my next, you know, tap fandom. I love fantasy. I do love fantasy. I love fairies. I love mythical. I think a perfect example of like my favorite movie of fantasy is actually Maleficent. I think that was beautifully done. Maleficent was beautifully done because the way how the fae and the fairies, the you know, magical forest, like all of that. I think like that, you know, even though it's Disney, but the way how they brought, you know, Maleficent being an evil into like her own story, that's kind of like where in the fantasy wise, that's where I'm a big fan of. Or Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Rings is another one that it's one of my top fandoms of fantasy. And of course, in video games, Final Fantasy X for me is my top favorite because I've always wanted to be a summoner. That's one of my most favorite.
So, like,
Yeah.
real quick, I do want to ask, though, when you talk about fantasy and you mentioned Final Fantasy, are you, like, do you pick certain Final Fantasies over the others?
Yes.
Because of the fantasy elements to
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yeah, I definitely do. I think like if I have to narrow like my top 5, I guess Final Fantasy 1 is actually pretty good. That was my first, of course, Final Fantasy, but story wise, it's actually really good. And it has that kind of fantasy of it,
Yeah.
the armor and all of that. And then of course, Final Fantasy 7, obviously, Final Fantasy 8, then 9, and then 10 for sure is my top favorite. And I think for me, because I am that soapy, I like the soapy, I like the love triangle,
Well,
or the love story to it. So I think that's why I really liked about 7, 8,
And I think those
9.
games...
Actually, all 3 of them had them, but 10 for me was the best one because Summoner and summoning Aeons, and
Yeah.
that was so pretty.
Well, I also think those
It was
games
awesome.
kind of came out at a really, like, important part of our lives, too.
It really did.
Because you and I are the same age, so I can say that, when
Yeah.
those games came out. they
Yeah,
were-
and Yuna was actually one of my first cosplays that I ever did, and I actually created too. So it's just a very important fandom for me. And then of course, third on my list on that is going to be comic book. That's where I finally started getting into reading. Comic books, and I got into, of course, I originally started in Marvel.
Same.
I actually didn't start in DC. My first comic book that I read was actually Wolverine Origins from X-Men. And I think during that time, it was because when I first read that, I think it was like 6 years old around that time. And it was right when X-Men Evolution was on TV all the time.
Well, yeah, the X-Men, the original show.
Yeah, the original show, and I was
cartoon.
watching it so often that I just really got into mutants and
Yeah.
X-Men and all of that. So technically, my first comic book was actually Origins from
Yeah.
Wolverine, and from there, it's that kind of started everything. And of course, because a big fandom of mine too is the history of like Greek mythology and all that ancient history. That's where I finally got connected with Wonder Woman, and why I'm a big fan of Wonder Woman is because of her history of the Greek mythology, where the Amazons come from and everything. And that's where I got drawn into Wonder Woman, and now it's been my top comic book character that I love.
Well, I mean, our house is also covered in Wonder Woman stuff as well.
Yes, I have a collection of it.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, I do love horror and supernatural. I am a big fan of horror movies. You're not,
I'm not.
but we'll get into that later.
So
And it's been a little hard to keep up with my horror fan.
your horror fix.
Yeah, because you don't really like that much.
I guess, explain a little bit what you mean with supernatural, because I do feel like there are going to be people that listen to this that will immediately gravitate to the show.
Yes,
But
yes.
what do you mean by supernatural?
So on the supernatural, I like more supernatural that has history and that has, I guess, like the witchy, the cult,
Okay.
the
Like The Nun, like the movie The Nun,
Yes.
where it was like the demon, whatever.
Yes, I like
yeah.
a lot of ghost and demon and
Gotcha.
that kind of genre.
Ancient evils.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
okay.
love that stuff. We visit Salem in
Yeah.
Boston and during Halloween, and that was, oh my god, amazing.
Which, if we do get to talk about it today or next, we do have
Yeah.
I do have some tips for y'all that are listening.
Yes. But so that's definitely another fandom. And then of course my last one would be crime. I am a big fan of crime, murder.
Yeah, I will say.
I listen to of course Bailey Sarian. I watch her YouTubes all the time. First of all, she's beautiful, and why wouldn't you watch her? She's like, goals right
She's
there.
the one that does her makeup and does the
Yes,
yeah, okay.
and talks about crime. And I love true crime. I think I love true crime more because I'm like, holy cow, like that happened a couple blocks from here or
See,
something,
I like true crime. Like I've watched so many things with you, but at the same time, there's a part of me that I guess it's the ignorance is bliss, to where it's like I don't want to believe that stuff is true.
I know.
That's why I gravitate towards fantasy.
Yeah.
But like I'm so interested in like your crime shows. Like we watched that one that happened in, I think it was the Murdoch one. It was so good.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, man, I don't want to picture myself in those situations. So I think that's where like I have such an iffy on crime stuff.
Yeah.
Like I love it, but at the same time, like I don't want to go to bed thinking about like the neighbor who was liquefying humans in crates or whatever.
Yeah. 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 So those are definitely like my top, I guess, fandoms that I have.
So let's mix it up a little bit. Since you and I are both number 3 for superheroes, let's go ahead and start with that. Since I feel like we have a lot more positives that we can kind of like bounce back and forth versus the debates that we're going to get into with other things. So, so you said that your first was Marvel. Mine was as well. I actually started with Iron Man, more specifically War Machine, who is, for the folks who have been living under a rock for the last like 10, 15 years, War Machine is Iron Man's best friend, James Rhodey, who ends up taking up the mantle of War Machine. If you really want a history, go look it up. That was my first thing. I remember when they had the movie trailer. The first time I saw it was attached to Transformers, but it was at the end of Transformers. So you watch the movie, and then the Iron Man trailer came out, and that made me like 8-year-old. No, what was it? 8? It was 2008. So like 17.
I was gonna say
17. Yeah, I was like, no, I was like 17 years old when that movie came out. 17-year-old me was just blown away by it. I skipped school actually to go watch Iron Man in the theaters. I was a junior in high school when it came out, and that's what started it for me. But I think the older I got, I started getting into DC, like you said, and I think it's because I guess I just started to history. Again, I'm a fan of history, so like I started learning more about the time periods of history, and how like Superman was created.
Well, the creators.
Right, exactly. When
how
they created these characters, they were created during very influential times in American history. Like with the whole immigrant boom, like the promise of a better life in America. Superman. The crime of the Great Depression was Batman.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman's creator was a dude who had a mistress, but at the same time, the guy created the polygraph.
Yeah.
So like, these folks are like rooted in history.
Yes.
And then, of course, on the same side with Marvel, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and other folks over there were fighting the good fight with like the civil rights and whatnot with the X-Men. But I think that history kind of drew me more into comics.
Yes.
And at that, I started to relating more to DC than Marvel. And I will definitely fly the DC flag before I fly a Marvel flag. I feel like in our relationship, I've worn a DC hat to every Marvel movie we've seen.
Every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. every Marvel movie you have actually watched. Jesus.
So what brought you to DC?
So I think, like I said, I think the history of Wonder Woman is actually what really brought me into it. It was the Greek mythology of it, the history of that, and then from there, I just was stuck Wonder Woman for the longest time, and then finally, of course, I started reading Justice League, and then I read, of course, about Batman and stuff like that, his history, and I actually really gravitated to his history because it is kind of gothic. It is kind of dark, gothic, and that's, it did intrigue me.
Well, yeah. I mean, Gotham is supposed to be... Oh, I don't think it's supposed to... It's supposed to be... I think it's more based off of Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Because Metropolis is supposed to be New York City. But it still has that really gothic architecture to it. So it's got that feel to it.
And so that I think I gravitated to that because of that. And then, of course, I became a Superman fan because he's from a different planet. And I thought it was so cool. And he's humble. That's the thing I liked about him, is that he's kind of humble. Like, I know you don't like Superman much.
I hate Superman. I will watch movies and shows.
I don't know.
I hate Superman.
I think what I like about him is that he wants to be like human. Is that he really wants to have a life. He wants to have a wife. He wants to have kids. And I think that's why I gravitated to him. It's because of that.
I'm a Batman fan, but I'm not a Batman fan. I like Nightwing. I like Red Hood.
I do like Nightwing.
I like those characters.
Yes.
I will pick them over Batman. But I like them and I hate Superman because Superman is the invincible alien that I feel that
Too overpowered.
right, but I feel like he's like this slate where you can create new powers anytime a villain that is close to him like it rivals him in power. Oh, he's got ice breath now, or oh, he's got heat vision. When it comes to like Nightwing or like the
Batman.
human,
Yes, I understand.
I'm not going to go down that Batman hole because there's those fans who are like, oh, Batman could beat anybody with prep time. I'm not going to say that. I'm
Yeah.
saying like Nightwing specifically because he was an acrobat
Yeah, I know.
in a circus, and here he is using that and kicking people's ass.
Yes.
And to me, what I liked about it was I guess it's the same thing people like about Spider-Man, where he's a smart ass about it. So Nightwing's gonna kick your ass and make fun of you for it.
He also has a great ass.
Well, he has an ass. I mean, he's the greast ass in the DC universe.
Yeah, he's the Captain America of asses, and
America's ass has got DC's ass. Yes. But that's what I guess gravitated me towards like Nightwing is because he's like the everyman of the comics.
Yeah,
he doesn't have powers. He doesn't. I mean, obviously he was adopted by Bruce Wayne, but he doesn't have the money.
Yes,
comes from a very blue collar family working on the circus. And whatnot. So I think I like that.
I think why I like Superman is because he was a farmer.
His dad was a farmer.
Well, yeah, exactly. His dad, but he grew up in a farm. That country feel.
So did you watch Smallville?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I am a fan of Smallville. I do love Smallville. That's actually what show I actually completed from start to finish.
I liked Smallville because I think it brought a different flavor to Superman.
Yes.
He wasn't just the blue wearing the underwear outside the suit. Yeah. It really humanized him, and I guess I liked that more than I liked the character.
Although what's the one with oh my god, it's a movie. I always forget which Superman Begins where he
Returns.
Or Returns?
Well, the one that
what's the actor's name?
Brandon Routh.
Yes, I think so.
The one that was the Atom on
with the slow bullet coming at him.
Yeah, okay. Superman Returns.
Yeah, so Superman Returns. I actually really like that one. I think it was because I guess it's the start of it, the beginning of it, and a little classy to it.
That and we were too young for the Christopher Reeve Supermans. We watched them, but obviously we were too young for those growing up in the 90s. Mm-hmm. So I think Superman Returns was a real big blockbuster moment for Superman.
I think that's what did it. Mm-hmm.
So I think same thing for us too. Like I will die on this hill. Batman and Robin is one of my favorite superhero movies of all time.
I do love that one.
Everybody hates it, but I love it. I will quote endlessly Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze puns.
I think the reason why I love that movie too is because of Poison Ivy.
Oh, Poison Ivy was great.
Oh my god.
Everything in the movie was amazing.
And Bane, I was like, oh, yes, this is what we need.
I remember, so there was this time I went into a comic book shop, right? And long story short, my mom sold a bunch of my toys that I had as a kid that ended up being really valuable. And as an adult, I went into a comic book shop and they had this toys of Mr. Freeze and Batman from that movie. And I was like, I used to have those as a kid. And the guy behind the comic book shop was like, yeah, this movie's stupid. And I was like, well, I liked it. And he goes, well, yeah, kids your age really liked it. I was like, dude, I'm 25 years old. I'm not a kid. But at the same time, too, I was like, well, what did you hate about it? He goes, well, it was hokey. I was like, you mean it was like a comic book?
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, well, what do you mean by that? And I was like, it was a comic book movie. You look at, you read a comic book, but you don't read a comic book and expect Batman Begins or The Dark Knight, the Christopher Nolan ones. Yeah. You read a comic book and you expect Batman and Robin.
Exactly.
And it was amazing. Bat nipples aside, the movie was amazing. Mr. Freeze, oh God. I do it every year, and I will post it on our socials. This ice cream social post is when the first freeze happens. Yeah. I will post the always winterize your pipes from Mr. Freeze. I love that movie. Everything
That's
about
the movie
that was
I can
great.
never get tired of.
Right.
I can actually watch it whenever it comes on. I'll sit there and watch it. I will never flip the channel. I will just sit there and watch it. It's
along that
so
side,
good.
Who's your favorite Batman actor?
Ooh. I'm gonna say most recently Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck.
Because
I knew I married you for a good reason.
I have to say, he does a great Ben Affleck. I'm sorry,
he does
Bruce,
a great Bruce Wayne.
Bruce Wayne, sorry. He does do a great Ben Affleck too. But Bruce Wayne, he does a fantastic job with Ben Affleck. I am gonna say I despised it. I am gonna say it. I really did not like it with Robert Pattinson.
See, I don't want to see. We can make a whole podcast on Batman.
Again, the movie's great. It's just Robert Pattinson. Give me another Batman. Somebody else, just not Robert Pattinson.
My favorite part of that movie was the aesthetic of Gotham.
Yes, I really.
That was my favorite Gotham of everything. It like when you look at a comic book and you see that movie, that is the Gotham of the comic books. Yeah. When you play the Arkham games, like that is how Gotham should have been. So that was seeing that happen.
I loved it.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Seeing like the chases and everything and him like, it was like so aesthetically pleasing.
Just not Robert Pattinson.
Right. I liked it, but that's something we can, debate at a later day.
So there's a little bit of a dislike on that, on the superhero part.
I'll watch anything superhero. I know there's a few like of the Marvel shows that you haven't really watched or we haven't, I've kind of watched ahead of you. But
I'm catching up.
Yeah, I like it. I am worried that, and I don't want to kind of put the cart before the horse, but we do have a guest, so plot twist, we have a guest coming on next week.
Yes, so stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. We'll give you all the information later. But he's really he's on the pulse of like movies, and I feel like Marvel has peaked when it comes to these movies. They've created these characters, or they've brought these characters to the light, and then of course, the actors have moved on. The characters' stories have finished, and now they're trying to basically capture lightning in a bottle again when it comes to like the Eternals or some of the other movies that have come out, and I don't think they're going to do it. And there's a reason why DC keeps on rebooting Batman is because Batman sells.
It really does.
It does.
It does.
And, whether it's Ben Affleck, Robert Pattinson, whoever, Michael Keaton, that's the thing. Okay, so there's 3 different Batmans. You have Ben Affleck, Michael Keaton, and Robert Pattinson. They're all bringing a different genre of people and different fans. So you're going to have fans.
Yes.
They're going to come to these movies versus fans of you're going to get the 6 guys that read all issues of the Eternals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's our superhero talk. It's kind of...
But I did like Eternals, though.
It was good. I liked Eternals. I did.
I
liked it.
I really did.
The teasing and the end of it,
Angelina Jolie's in it, and I'm just in
Angelina
love
Jolie's
with her.
great. Speaking of Maleficent. So that's our superhero talk. We will definitely probably have many episodes.
Tell me about history. I know you were really into history.
I love history. I was going to mention that. So history, the only class I could stay awake for in high school. In Texas, we have these standardized, I don't know if they do them anymore, but back when we were in school, they had these standardized tests that we had to pass to get out of school. I got a perfect score on my history one. The valedictorian of my high school didn't even get that, but I did. So that just tells you how much I liked history. My goal in life, graduating high school, was to work in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. That has definitely changed since then.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted to do that. I love history. National Treasure, that movie is one of my favorite movies of all time.
That's actually really good.
Love that stuff, man. I wanted to be like the Nick Cage, where you could look at stuff and immediately just dates and all that stuff. So I like to find history. I was kicking myself. I went to a wedding in Charleston, South Carolina for a cousin of mine, and I was kicking myself afterwards because I went with such a sole focus of going to the wedding that I completely forgot and missed the fact that Charleston was such a pirate port back in the golden age of piracy. And I could have went to the pirate museum or seen a bunch of stuff like that, and I
love that.
I was so mad at myself. But specifically with you, we went to Boston, the Boston, Massachusetts area for our honeymoon. Mm-hmm. We did go to Salem, and
for me,
yeah, for you, well, for me too.
Yeah, but we have the history of it too.
Spoiler alert: our last name is Bishop. Look up the first woman tried and executed for witchcraft in the United States.
Yep.
Anyway,
I'm not saying he's related, but
there's speculations. Yeah. There's a big old gap in our history.
I bet you we need to do a DNA test.
I do.
Just kind of see.
But anyway, when we went up there, I've been to Boston a few times. I've been to all the history stuff. But one of the spots that I've always wanted to go to was the site of the Boston Massacre, which wasn't a massacre. It was just, one person was killed during history. Again, look it up. I'm not here to explain history to y'all. That could be a whole other podcast. And I was very let down by it because it was literally just like a plaque on the ground, which I feel like I went expecting so much more.
But you would think it would be like a monument or
Right,
something big,
exactly.
something that stood out.
Yeah.
Not something on the ground that we literally
We
walked over.
We
it
missed it the first
three
time.
times.
Yeah, we missed it.
And then we looked down. We're like, oh,
Yeah.
there it is.
So I was let down by that, but like I love that history. I mean, the whole colonial, like, again, like I'd mentioned earlier, American history, the colonial America is my favorite point of time. Unfortunately, here in the state of Texas, we have to learn Texas history, and I don't care about it. See, like we have a very rich old city that we live in. Allie here, she used to work downtown, so she knows quite a bit of it.
And I think I'm up to here with
Yeah.
Texas history.
I don't care about it. Like I'd much rather learn about the American Revolution and everything like that.
Yeah.
But we had Assassin's Creed 3. Again, that's what I was getting to. Is that it's my all-time favorite Assassin's Creed because it takes place during the American Revolution. I'll play that game till I die because I get to mess around in colonial Boston and everything like that, and get to do the Boston Tea Party. Love everything about that. So history is my favorite part. I do like more than just that part of history. I like your medieval histories, you know.
See, that's where I get into that because
so that's where we relate to it. Is like the
Yeah.
old, like the knights.
the knights, the Queen Mary of Scots. Like
Yeah.
I love that history. I love.
What was it? The War of the Roses, right?
Yeah, War
with
of
like
the
the
Roses,
Tudors and
The
whatnot.
Tudors. Like I actually watched the Tudors. I
Yeah.
would love that show. And then I go even beyond before that. I mean, I love 300, or
Yeah,
you know,
the
Spartan,
story
and, like,
of the Spartans.
Roman,
Yeah.
and that's my
So
history.
300, directed by Zack Snyder.
I know,
Just saying.
it's so good.
Also a comic. Just saying.
Yes.
Anyway, as you can tell if you've seen me recently in the last year or so, or even watching this podcast, I do have a Viking half sleeve.
Yes, we're big
We're big
Viking.
Viking fans. I know it's not like the historical Vikings. We do have some friends that are like
But we
the
like the history of
reenactors.
it, too.
I love it, but I don't know. There's a certain like romance about the dramatized Vikings that you see like
Yes.
on the TV show Vikings, or even like in the Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
I mean, we have a cat named Freya.
We do have a cat named Freya. Like
We
there's
also have
just-
a corgi named Athena. Greek.
Yeah, Greek and Norris.
Yeah.
So history, all that stuff I'm about. She's I think again another where our interests intersect is with like Japan, like in feudal Japan.
Yes.
You know, like
That's
the
my
samurais
history.
and whatnot.
That's definitely like my history. I love the history of old feudal Japan. I mean, I love in China the dynasties. Like that's like my thing. One of my favorite games to play of all time is actually Dynasty Warriors because
That's
it's
China, by the way.
yeah, it
But
is.
yeah.
It's China, but that's the dynasties.
Yeah, the romance of the
So
Three Kingdoms.
that's like why I play that game because it talks about the history of the Chinese dynasties that were back then, and that's like my thing. I love it. I love it so much. And I cosplayed a character from Dynasty Warriors that I really disliked, but I ended up liking him in the end. Yeah.
I know there's a certain point where, of course, obviously the advancements in modern everything, but I feel like we regressed when it comes to wearing clothes instead of armor.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, like you look at that stuff.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just too beautiful.
But kind of like, so you mentioned Dynasty Warriors, of course, Ghost of Tsushima, Assassin's Creed. These games are very like historical fantasy.
Like I actually also like a lot of adventure games. Lara Croft,
See,
Tomb Raider.
Tomb Raider. Oh, what? Uncharted, hate it.
See, I actually like Uncharted.
I don't like Uncharted.
because I guess it's literally Tomb Raider, but
But what
a male version of it, and I think they needed it.
But what I will say though is Tomb Raider is honest with itself
It
about
is
the mystery or like the supernatural.
Yes, and Uncharted's a little rushed.
Well, Uncharted is like, it's not like in the games. Spoiler: if you haven't played these games, like what's wrong with you? First off, it's been out forever. But like Uncharted, it's like a tomb raiding thing. But at the very end, obviously, it's like okay, they go and there's like these ancient guardians that have been alive for 400 years. Tomb Raider, you know that going into the game that there's some
Yes.
sort of mystical aspect to
Yes.
it. Uncharted, you
And also
think-
history.
Right. But Uncharted, you think you're just playing a history game until like these ancient warriors come out and you're like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
so that's what I didn't like about
I
it.
can see that.
I feel like it wasn't honest with itself.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
But I like it because I just love those adventure games. I do like Tomb Raider. That's actually
Tomb Raider's great. I do like Tomb Raider.
Another favorite
I
game
wish-
that I love to play.
I do want more movies of Tomb Raider though. I like the movies.
All right. So what else?
Well, going into fantasy, so like
Oh, yes.
we'll merge that, and I'll say that there is one fantasy that I really like and you do not like. That is Harry Potter. So,
and here is where everybody's gonna sign off
well,
because
there's
hate
going to
me.
be people on both sides of this, I feel. But I will say that I love Harry Potter. I grew up with it. I've read every book many, many times to the point where they're falling apart. I have all they're all first editions. I got them when I had to pre-order them at Barnes and Noble.
Mm-hmm.
That's how early I got these books. But I'm not obsessed. I don't do the whole Pottermore or I know I did once and I found out I'm in Gryffindor, but I'm not rocking it. I would get a tattoo.
Obsessed.
But no, so when I say obsessed is I remember vividly seeing the Deathly Hallows Part 1 at midnight. Back in the day when there was actual midnight showings. Nowadays it's 7 o'clock on a Thursday, whatever. But this was midnight. And there was folks that were dressed as broomsticks. They were running around on brooms at this. And there was these people that were referring to trash cans as cauldrons. They were not my friends. It was not me. I'm not that level of obsessed. But I know you have strong feelings about Harry Potter. And why is that?
Well, a lot of it is, I'm not going to say that I wasn't a fan of it, but I definitely became less of a fan of it when it just became overly populated, overly obsessed.
That's understandable.
To the point where it's still a big thing now.
It is.
And I mean, I think where I get annoyed is the fact that I can't go to a store, when you go to a shopping center, you will see Harry Potter every corner. Literally.
Yeah, the
there's
fact that
always
there's still a
just
Harry Potter section at Hot Topic, sure.
Yes, and I'm Hot Topic is my favorite store, and every time it's Harry Potter, it's a whole wall section of Harry Potter. I'm just
But see, I feel that way
it's
about
overrated.
Stranger Things.
Well, see, yes, and that's another one that I'm not too big. And let me first get into the Harry
for
Potter
sure.
on it, and then we'll go into Stranger Things.
I'm just trying to relate to you.
Yeah, I know. So definitely Harry Potter. It's I did watch all the movies. I mean, I think the most recent movie I actually haven't watched, but
Yeah, that would be Fantastic Beasts: Secrets of Dumbledore.
yeah, no, I haven't seen that one. That's the most recent one that I haven't watched. But I did watch all the movies. I never read the books, and maybe it could have been because I never read the books. Once again, I wasn't too.
I have them if you want to borrow them.
No, I'm just not into those lengthy books. I like short stories.
Yeah,
I do like short stories more than, something that's very, very lengthy. And that's why I can't keep up with even what's the Twilight? Twilight, I didn't
4
actually
books.
read. I know it's only 4 books, but they're just
Not
too
that
thick.
I've read them.
I think that's one thing is when I see a book this thick, I'm just never mind. I'm good. I like short books.
I have not read Twilight, I promise.
Yes, you have. You are actually a really big fan of Twilight.
I'm not a fan of
Yes, you
Twilight.
are. You just won't admit it. And when I first met you, that's you were not shutting up about Twilight.
Bullshit.
Anyways, but yes, no, Harry Potter, I think another thing that I'm not a big fan of when it comes to anything watchable, like TV, movies, in general, is children. I don't like.
Fair.
I don't like. That's something that me and my hubby, we actually don't want to have kids. If we ever decide to have kids down the road, we've decided that we'll adopt one. But I've just not ever been a fan of kids, and I love kids, yes, but not. I take them in small doses.
Yeah, see,
I take them in small doses. It's just for me. I've never been a kid person.
I joke about it, but it's also, there's a lot of truth in it that, we had mentioned before in our previous episode that we had met at SeaWorld. It was our first job. Well, SeaWorld, working in the kids section, which was called the Happy Harbor, is probably the best birth control.
It really is.
For a 16-year-old ever.
Is. And I think that may be one thing that
Yeah.
kind of, I was oh. And then my brother had 4 kids, and another one, and another one's on the way.
I
and
was never an
I had
uncle
to
until I married
babysit all
you.
of those too. So that's probably another thing why I'm just not. I
But
don't
see,
like children. But going back into the Harry Potter thing is the fact that
they're children.
yes,
Yeah.
their children for me they were a little too annoying. I didn't like Harry. I didn't like what's her name?
Hermione.
Hermione. Yeah, see, I'm not a fan of Harry Potter.
So, it's funny.
And I love like wizards and fantasy and all of that. I love the visuals and the art and all of that. I just didn't like the story.
So, it's funny that, like, I've worn glasses and needed glasses for, like, over 20 years now, since, like, the 5th grade. And maybe people used to call me Harry Potter all the time, like, around the time the movie started coming out.
I can see it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I had that dream of maybe one day playing Harry Potter, but of course I'm not British.
Yeah.
But not to segue, but I do relate to you in saying that that's how I felt about Stranger Things.
Yes.
Was
that's another
that it
one.
was kids. Like, I had mentioned to a friend who's obsessed with it. I was like, look, I like the premise, I like the story, but the fact that it's kids, I hate it. Give me a story with, like, the adults doing that stuff, and I'll watch every episode of it.
Yeah.
The fact that it's the kids, it takes me out of it. Because they're, again, like you said, annoying. Because they're not, and, like, I'm not, this isn't a hate on children. But it's just, there's great child actors. I mean, hell, we used to watch, like, Boy Meets World and everything back in the day. But
well,
I
like
think that...
Ben Kenobi.
Right.
With, little Leia.
Little Leia.
She's adorable, and I love Ben Kenobi.
But that's the thing is, she was like small doses kind of thing. It wasn't where she was the main character, and she's here having to fight otherworldly demons or whatnot, or trolls.
Yeah, like that's one children actor that I would love to meet.
Yeah.
I want her to go sign something for me.
Okay, so not to get sidetracked, but do you remember the Comic-Con where they brought all the Stranger Things kids here to San Antonio, and how wild it was?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact that, like, these were kids at the time. And there was, like, adults, like, people that were older than us at the time that were, like, fighting to get pictures.
It almost got ugly. Like,
it was
like,
wild, man.
Cow.
This was, like, I mean, this was probably, like, season 1, so this is right around that time. But it's just, to me, like, I don't, it's just, it's something I can't fathom.
I get it. Like, it's that 80 nostalgia that people really love. Yeah. And I've just never got into that. And it's so crazy because I love horror, and it does have that horror 80s.
Yeah, it's a very horror-esque kind of thing.
To it, but I can't get into it. And I think a lot of it is like, as I'm watching these episodes with the kids, it annoys me too much that I just can't continue and get into.
But you're
the
like
story.
that with. This isn't a dig at you, but you're like that with a lot of things when it's period stuff.
Yes.
Like there was that. I mean, it was a crime show that I think I wanted to watch. We haven't watched it yet, but it either took place in the 70s or the 80s. I think it's called Candy. It's on Hulu, but it's but it's in that whole vibe where it's like the old cars, like the old styles, and you don't want to see it because you don't like that nostalgic kind of feel to it.
I've never got into it. I don't know.
Yeah, see, like, but I understand that.
I mean, I do like that the horror, and it's weird why I don't like Stranger Things, because I do like those types of horrors back then. I mean, Freddy Krueger, Jason, and all of that. I mean, I like that stuff, but I also wasn't like a super fan of it as well. So it's just that vibe that I just never got into.
So this is a good time to bring up that you like horror, as you're saying. I like terror. I don't like gore or bloody stuff. So when it comes to like horror movies that are overly gory or like slasher films, I don't like those. Yeah. I will watch terror films or suspense films like A Quiet Place.
That was good. That was good.
Really good. It was good. I didn't want to see it, but I watched it anyway. Yeah. I also don't like clowns, so out of it. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. You can shove it. I'm not going to watch those.
He really does not like clowns.
I hate clowns.
We did get you a clown for your birthday once.
Yeah, and just because...
That was your mom's idea.
It was. So just because she's my mom and
she just thought it was going to be funny.
I have to forgive y'all. But, so I don't like overly gore things like that, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, anything like that where it's just... murder porn. I don't like that stuff, but I'll watch terror movies.
And I'm not too into gore either, like that crazy. I think the ones that I like are either ghost related of horror.
Like The Conjuring?
Yes.
Okay.
Conjuring is definitely one. It's actually one of my top favorite ones. Grudge,
I've never seen The Grudge.
I know you. I'm sure you haven't.
I haven't. I don't know why. I mean, I know why.
One day I'll actually make you watch that.
But I don't think I'll take it seriously because it's a scary movie.
I know, scary movie did ruin it. But anyways, I know a lot of people didn't like these, but Paranormal Activity.
I hated those
I know
movies.
so many people did not like Paranormal Activity, but I actually liked them because it really made it more feel real, and I think that's why I like to feel scared. Like I like to feel like, oh, this can actually happen to me.
Well, did you ever
Like,
see
that's
Blair
what
Witch
I
Project?
like. I'm sorry?
The Blair Witch Project?
Yes.
Did
That
you
was-
see it when you were a
yes.
kid?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually really love the Blair Witch.
Did you see the new one?
I think I have, but I think I did.
The sequel to it?
But it wasn't that good or something.
No, it wasn't that good.
I don't think it was that great. I think I do remember seeing it. Yeah. Or like, what was that other one? Rec? Was it Rec?
Oh, REC, yeah,
Yeah,
record,
REC. Record. Oh my
Yeah.
God, I like them.
No, Rec was the original. It was Quarantine was the U.S. version.
Quarantine,
Yeah,
that's
Quarantine
right.
was the
Quarantine
original
is
one.
another one that I actually really liked.
The
So
found footage style.
yes,
Because they tried that with the superhero one, or not a superhero. Well, like Cloverfield.
Oh, Cloverfield.
Cloverfield was another one that was that found footage because that was
Yeah.
a huge thing back in that day. Or
Yeah.
shit. There's a movie where it's like the kid gets superpowers and it's like that.
I don't remember.
But it's something along the lines of that. I can't remember the name of it right now.
But those are the
But yeah.
types of like horror movies that I like. Not the super gory. I think the only like gory one, and I don't know if that qualifies as gory, or maybe it does. Was it The Hills Have Eyes?
That's very gory.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
it
like
is.
dealing with like mutants and kissing
Yeah,
cousins.
I think it was. Yeah, so that's probably the goriest movie that I actually really enjoyed, other than.
Have you ever watched
Jason
like
or
what House of a
Freddy.
Thousand Corpses or The Devil's Rejects? Those Rob Zombie ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those were okay, but I think
Yeah.
those were a little too much.
Too gory.
Yeah.
I will say I watched the newest Halloween. And actually, not the newest one because we are recording this post COVID. The 2018 version of Halloween. So the remake.
I actually didn't watch that one. I
You
haven't
didn't see
watched
that
that
one? Yeah, because there's two of them now. The final Halloween movie comes out this year.
Yeah. No, I
was-
haven't actually.
Yeah, it's Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. So Halloween
I need
Ends
to
is
watch
this
this.
year.
Yeah.
I watched that one, and that one wasn't bad. I just feel like I don't like murder porn is what I call it when it's just someone out to just like
I like murder porn.
murk people. You've
But
watched-
real like true crime.
Yeah, see, like that's the thing. Like we mentioned it. Like I've come home from work and you've been watching like smack in the middle of a documentary and I'll watch it and I love it, but I just don't like that uneasy feeling that hey, yeah, that could be our neighbor.
Yes, I
So
know.
I don't like that stuff.
See, I think I've grown to a lot of documentaries now because I think that's been a thing a lot too.
Yeah.
Most recently, there's been a lot more true crime documentaries. And then, of course, I've been getting into a lot of true crime podcasts, as well as on YouTube. I've been watching Kendall Ray a lot and listening to her podcast too. And she really, I think I love her the most on the podcasts and videos about true crime because she really goes into great detail and she really gets the facts of what actually happens in these true crimes events. So I really like her. And then, of course, my other top favorite that I really like to follow is Bailey Sarian. And I just love her. She's gold. She's babe. She's dreams. She's so beautiful. And, of course, she also does makeup while she's talking about true crimes and her dark histories. So
See, that's what
That's
I
awesome.
think that also kind of bridges the gap between us is like I know the history of some of this stuff, like your John Wayne Gacy's, your Jeffrey Dahmer's, and then you've heard about them on that, and like we watched the documentaries on them, and of course like they on your podcast and all they kind of like give you the cliff notes and they don't go into detail, but then like when you see like the actual, John Wayne Gacy thing, it was like 3 episodes on Netflix or whatnot. It's I like that because it's history. It's like raw history.
yeah.
So moving on to the history, and it kind of ties into that because there's a lot of like historical fiction movies or historical based, but like the slow burns and like the pulpy ones, like Mad Men or stuff like that. Like I will watch it.
You
Give me it
would.
all, but you don't like it because it's not as
Too draggy for
Yeah.
me. It's too slow. I don't like very, very slow shows like that. It bores me. It really does.
I understand, but again, I think that just comes from my love of history is the reason
Yeah.
why I like that.
Yeah.
And
I think one of another show that you're very into is what What's that investigator one? But he's also a crime. It's also
Oh,
crime.
Dexter.
Dexter.
Oh, I love Dexter.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't get into it.
And it's just, it's
I don't like the
finally over.
narration. That's what it is on
Oh,
that
you don't
for
like
me.
the narration, like the
Yeah.
inner monologue is
Yeah,
what it
the
is.
inner monologue. I don't
Yeah.
like it.
I love Dexter.
I think that's what ruins it for
Dexter's
me.
so
I think
good.
it would be great,
So good.
but I just
And see,
the inner.
to kind of bridge the gap back into superheroes, is that guy that plays Dexter, Michael C. Hall. He was my pick for Carnage.
Okay, I can
He
see
was
that.
he was definitely a pick for Carnage or Scarecrow for me.
Yeah, I can see
Just
that.
because, like, you ever watch Dexter? Like, he's the perfect psychopath
Yeah, I can see
because
that.
he is. I'm happily, disappointedly satisfied with the revitalized ending of Dexter, the new blood that came out last year. It was so good, and it's
Yep.
finally over, and I'm sad and mad because I want more.
Yeah, I think that's another reason why I don't like Walking Dead.
I read the comics, and then I stopped watching the show.
But I think also for me, why I don't like Walking Dead, I don't like zombies. I don't like zombie movies. I like zombie games. I like to kill zombies.
28 Days
But,
Later, I think,
like-
was the only zombie movie I'll ever watch. Or Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
But Shaun of the Dead is
or
obviously
if it's like
comedy.
funny. Yeah,
Yeah,
if,
Shaun
it's,
of
if
the
it's
Dead.
funny, I'm okay watching it. Or Zombieland. That's another good one on comedy. I like the comedy zombies. But shows that are...
Well, I think comedy zombies are more kind of realistic than zombie shows. Because
Yeah.
I feel like that's what
It's more
half of what
enjoyable,
people
but
would be
like The
doing.
Walking Dead, that was another really overrated show for me, and I just
Walking Dead was so good in the beginning, but I think they lost sight of it
yeah
with what they do.
yeah
And they started making too many wrong decisions. And it's finally ending.
good lord, I can't even believe it's still going on right now.
12 seasons, something like that.
Some seasons just they do not need to go that long.
No.
When they go that long, perfect example, Supernatural.
God, how many
Good
seasons was that
Lord.
finally ended?
I don't even know because I haven't even caught up to that.
I see, like, that's
It's
what
just too long.
I think that's what's so
and
hard.
I love Supernatural. That was a really good show,
I
but
think what's
it
so
got too
hard
much.
with shows from like back then is they had a lot of, I think they call it Freak of the Week episodes, where it was like, oh, we're fighting this guy, we're fighting this guy. Nowadays with shows, they make a lot of like story-based decisions to where like it's obviously shorter seasons, like 10 episodes, 8 episodes versus the 24 that they used
Yeah.
to do. So it's very like it's a lot easier to get involved with now.
Yeah.
Like I think I'm actually listening to, it's called Talkville. It's a podcast where they're rewatching. It's Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum, the Lex Luthor and Clark Kent are rewatching Smallville.
yeah.
And like that's the thing is they're on like episode 4 or 5, and yeah, it's very Freak of the Week where it was like a new villain for Clark to
Yeah,
tackle.
they did.
So like the whole first season before like they actually got the ground underneath them in traction was just like that. So
But I see,
a lot
if
of
you think about
rewatching
it
those
back
old
then,
shows.
I think we needed
Right, that's what I
those
mean.
lengthy,
Exactly.
shows.
But that's why like
because there was nothing else much more to watch. I mean,
Right.
so it's kind of needed those lengthy
and that's
shows.
why like I'm gonna just kind of like
Yeah.
go to left field here real quick and say like The Office.
Yeah.
So The Office, if people don't like it, I mean that's absolutely their
It's a
decision.
type of humor. It's
Right.
a type of humor.
But I tell people to watch the second season. Don't watch the first season because the first season like
Yeah.
it's just the second season is where obviously they had the money, they got picked up,
Yes.
they actually dedicated themselves
Yep.
to something.
I see that.
So if you don't like it after the second season, then you're not gonna like it.
Yeah.
But don't watch the first season or don't watch the first 2 episodes and say, "Oh, this show is terrible."
What's the English version one?
The Office? It's called The Office.
Is it called The
Yeah.
Office?
And it did not go nearly as long.
No, because
But-
that's something I've heard that in. I know it's a.
It's an English humor.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
an
thing, is
English humor,
it's-
so it's something to
yeah.
you really like get used to of the way I guess it translates.
It's a different type of humor. It's
yeah,
just,
but I've heard that one is actually
good.
really good. But I
I
don't know
love
if that's
all
the type.
types of humor. I don't think you would like it.
Yeah, and because it's hard for me
It's
to.
a very
with-
dry humor.
Yeah, and that's where I think I have struggle on when it comes to comedy, the dry humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of like English shows that I'll watch, like the IT Crowd, and you're like, "This is stupid." I'm like, "This is the greatest thing ever."
IT crowd. I don't remember that one. Yeah.
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 But so I guess something obviously my last fandom is sports and Formula One. Formula One is something I got into recently. A buddy of mine, he's really huge into it, so he wanted me to just check it out. We went over and watched the race, and yeah, I've been into it. I'm a Red Bull fan. Red Bull's they're currently leading the constructors, and Max Verstappen, he's right now leading it. He won last year, and I feel like I'm a Red Bull fan just because I really love the energy drink. So that's obviously the reason I gravitated to it. Yeah, sponsor us. And on top of that too, like I'm actually more of a fan of their second driver, Sergio Perez, because I did marry into a Latin family, and he is the only driver from Mexico.
And I think that's where I kind of became a little bit of a fan of it, because I'm not like crazy into it. Like
No, but you do like
and
the
your
representation of your
Yes,
culture.
and I do. And once you told me about the history about Checo, and
Yeah.
that he's technically the first.
Well, he's right now. I mean, everything that he does, he's like the first Mexican to do
Yeah,
it,
and
so.
I'm proud of my
Yeah.
my heritage and all of that. So I'm always excited for
Yeah, like last year he got
thrive.
like last year he got third place in his home Grand Prix in Mexico, and he was the first Mexican to do that. He was the first this year. He the first Mexican to get pole.
Yes.
So like I mean I've definitely like gone like off the deep end of Formula One, and I'm huge into
Yeah.
it now. I'm learning more and more about it every day because obviously this sport has been around for a long time.
I know when you first told me about it, I really thought it was like NASCAR. And,
Yeah, no, it's
I was like, oh, another left turn. And
Yeah,
here's
it's not like that at all.
And at first I was like, I'm not going to get into this because I've just never been a fan of that stuff. But then once you told me, I finally sat down and actually watched it with you, and I was like, oh, this is not
it's
like...
actually pretty cool.
Yeah, and I like that they go to different cities.
Yeah,
or, I mean,
different parts
countries.
of different countries.
I mean, that's really cool.
I mean, the worst part about this stuff is that the races are so early because, of course, they're all over
Yes.
in other countries. We did go to the United States Grand Prix, which is in Austin. We went last year with my brother and then two of our friends, and it was so exhausting, but it was one of the coolest weekends that we've ever done. I mean,
Yeah.
we've done so many Comic-Cons, but just like that was just so cool, like being there and just it was amazing. I really wish you would have gone, but I know you were working that time.
Yeah.
But I'm also big into sports. I'm actually a Boston fan. I mentioned Boston before. That's where my family's from, my father's side. So I was raised on like the Celtics, the Red Sox, Boston Bruins for hockey. We don't have hockey here anymore. We used to have a hockey team.
Yeah, sad.
But I'm obviously a Spurs fan because I was born and raised here. So I've seen, I watched the Tim Duncan dynasty and everything, the championships that
good
were
old
here.
days.
Yeah. I can't tell you really who's on the team now because I don't care. But I'm a huge Boston fan. I'm lucky and happy to say that I've seen the Red Sox win so many times in my lifetime, and I've seen the Celtics win. So like I've seen my teams win, which I will say, side note, we were supposed to originally go to Boston on our honeymoon the year we got married, and I ended up getting a really good job at the time, and this lady told me at the job that I could not take our honeymoon.
I know.
But if we would have went, I would have been there for game 1
Yes,
and
you
game 2
were.
of the World Series.
Yes, you were.
And I would have been there for the parade.
Yep.
That's the thing is I would have gotten to see all like the championship parade over the Red Sox.
And I would have been miserable because I don't like baseball.
But no, but that's another thing too about like so. Let's save it for another episode. But the sports here is so weird. You go up there.
It's all football.
Well, it's the Cowboys when they're winning, the Texans when they're winning, the Rangers when they're winning baseball, the Astros when they're winning, and then of course the Spurs. But up in Boston, I've been up there for a few times now.
Or Lakers. They got a lot of Lakers fans here.
A few Lakers. Well, they're the ones that hate, they like to start fights at our Spurs games.
Yeah, they do.
But I've been up there in Boston a couple times when like the Celtics are playing or like the Red Sox are playing, and like it's such a religion up there.
It really is.
Because like those teams are so ingrained in history up there. Yeah, the Spurs are a history here, but I mean, the Red Sox have been around for 100 years.
I feel like Dallas Cowboys is more of a religion here in Texas.
Dallas Cowboys isn't a religion. I mean, yeah, I guess it
Because
is.
you see it everywhere, and I'm like, man, when was the last time they won? Like
The 90s.
The 90s?
Yeah.
When I was born?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People like to repeat the hit. People like to talk about the history of the
And they're
Cowboys more
still
than anything.
die hardcore Dallas fans.
And then what was your?
But we'll get into more of the sports.
Then what was
that.
your last fandom?
Well, I actually don't have a sports. If I call it sports for me, like on fandom, if I had to choose, it would probably be like rodeo.
Okay.
I'm a big rodeo. I wish I was born as a country, in the country instead of a city girl. Now we're in the country.
See, that's another thing I really like about our relationship.
Rodeo.
I like our relationship because I was born and raised in the country, went to a country school, but I've always felt like a city boy.
Yeah.
And you're a city girl, but you obviously want to be the country. So it's like
I want a farm, I want a ranch, I want horses, I want everything. And that I think that's where if it came down to sports, I would more watch rodeo or the horse races. That was my thing. Or the horse buggy races, all that kind of stuff. Like
the chuck wagon races.
Yes, like I think that was like more my cup of tea of sports.
Yeah. Well, we've been to the rodeo here. We've been to the rodeo in Houston.
Yeah.
It's fun. I enjoy it.
Yes, I love my cowboy boots, and I would wear them every day if I could. I did for 7 years when I worked downtown. But yeah, those are a little bit of our fandom, a little bit of the dislike fandoms. Of course, I'm sure I'm gonna get a little bit of hate from.
No, you're probably gonna get as much support as you do hate.
Yeah. So and there's so good. There's so much more. I know.
There is.
I know. We can literally talk hours and hours, but we're already hitting an hour on this third episode, and we don't want to make it too long for you.
Right. Well, we want to. We want to basically kind of break everything down to their own episode. This is really just an intro to it.
But I want to talk about who we're going to have in our next episode.
So I teased it before, and I don't want to. I mean, I'm just going to give it away anyway. But this is a guy that I used to work with at one of the movie theaters here in town. This guy he has his own podcast. So he basically had his own fandom, and he's built it into this podcast. I'm going to go ahead and throw his link into all of this when we post this. We're going to start sharing his stuff. His podcast is called Palace Off the Top Ropes. This guy is the most electrifying person in the San Antonio podcast scene. He is so ingrained into this. He's got his finger on the pulse when it comes to movies because he does still currently work at a movie theater here in town. But he also has 2 spin-off podcasts of his own podcasts.
That is so cool.
He has one where it's really only during football season because he's a huge football fan. With another gentleman that works with him where they break down all the games, the draft, whatnot. But he's also got one that it's really cool to me because I think it's 30, he calls it like 30 for 30 or 30 on something, but it's basically movies that turned 30 this year. He started it last year with all of the movies that came out in 1991. I think it was like Rocky IV was one of them, another one, but he's doing it again this year. So where he basically goes through, he rewatches the movie, talks about them, how does it hold up nowadays versus then, what the box office numbers were back then. Because again, this guy is so in the movie industry,
genre.
Yeah, the movie genre with that. So again, like if a guy, I mean, this dude is the hardest working person in podcasts. Where he's basically got 3 podcasts that covers all of his own fandoms. He's started it. He does it by himself.
I'm excited.
I luckily have someone to talk to here and bounce back and forth. That's one thing that he's mentioned to me, and we will definitely get more into, is that he really wishes he has a co-host. I think that's with his spinoffs where he actually has people come in. But it's him by himself. So it's him doing everything, doing the legwork, doing that stuff. So we actually will have him here with us next week to learn all about that stuff. We will talk a little bit about like the state of movies nowadays. Like I don't think we can have him on without hearing his opinions on some of these things.
Oh, of course.
That we've started on.
Yes, I would love to hear.
So we're really, really excited to have him on next week.
And then the fact that he's pretty much started his own podcast and is doing all these other side podcasts.
Exactly.
On the side.
He's done.
I'm excited that he may, because we're so new to this.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's gonna give us some great advice,
tips, tricks, everything like that.
Yeah. So
he's definitely already done what we've wanting to do, and of course we started this podcast, so we're already there.
Yep.
But just hearing his story and how he started his, of course, we have the support of each other to do this. He kind of just had himself, so hearing his story is going to be exciting. So yes, tune in for that next week. We're gonna, if you have any questions for him, for starting your own podcast, or just getting what inspiration you can get to start whatever you want to do, whether it's streaming, podcast, anything, please submit them to us. Again, like we'd said at the top of the episode, if you have a fandom that you want to be heard, you have thoughts on our fandoms that you want to debate with us, we are open to it. We want this podcast to be us as much as it is you. So
and open to anybody.
Yeah. So if you are just absolutely appalled that she hates Harry Potter, please let her know. If you agree with her, let me know. Comment on YouTube, DM us on Instagram, Facebook, comment on the links.
Yes, please.
And if you want...
And rate us.
Rate us, please.
Rate us, please.
Even if it's 1 star, just give us a rating. It helps us out with being found. That way, if you are telling your friends about us, it's easy to find. Mm-hmm. Again, thank you so much for joining us on this journey. We appreciate all the feedback you were getting. We feel like we are getting better every episode.
Yes.
We are getting longer every episode, but we promise we will kind of keep it to a very average time.
Yes. Well, thank you so much again, guys, for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode.
See you on the next episode. Have fun, guys. Enjoy it.